Hey, Mark. Good morning, Althea.
Good morning.
Good morning. Just wait a couple more seconds and we'll get rolling. So the magic clock has just struck 11 a.m., so I'll get going. You can see I don't have my better half with me today, Tara, with COVID-19. Tara's doing family stuff, kid stuff, and we'll be switching off like this for as long as we continue these 11 a.m. webinars. We're also being respectful of the Prime Minister going live at around 11:15 or 11:20 every day. I find his messages, me personally, I find his messages quite reassuring. So we'll try and get off around 11:20, 11:25. So if you're interested, you can switch over to Facebook Live with Justin Trudeau. You know, when you listen to leaders in various countries react to this issue, I think we can be proud of the Prime Minister we have in this moment and what he's doing. It's interesting, I have clients and I have friends in the United States who last weekend they were talking about being on the beach, 2 families, 12 people playing on the beach. And I suggested to them that if they were in Ontario, they would have been arrested or at least kicked out of the park. So it's interesting how different jurisdictions are dealing with the issue and how it will all play out 3-4 months from now. So over the last couple sessions, Tara and I have shared with you some emotional state management tools at the beginning of each of these sessions. And there's a sequence that's really, really powerful in breaking a negative emotional state, moving into a calm state, and then moving into the resourceful state you want. And then you can follow it with a breathing meditation, which I'll share with you tomorrow. And so when you get these 4 steps down, the more times you do it, the first step is a pattern interrupt or a state break, an emotional state break. And the more times you do it, the new pattern becomes part of your norm. So instead of having to cognitively think of, oh, I'm in a bad place, I need to break my emotional state, it will start to happen automatically for you. You'll go to an emotional state and the next thing that happens, so when you're triggered into a negative emotional state, the next thing that happens is you'll instantly break your own emotional state. And of course, the emotional state break that I teach looking up and seeing your mobile telephone number on a billboard. And I always ask the person that I'm working with, what color is your number and what color is the background? Now, some people have really unique billboards, right? I've had people who have black letters on white backgrounds. I've had, of course, the standard highway signs, white on green. Then I've had people have their lights up in neon, bright pink, bright ever. I've had people see their letters not as a billboard, but as 3-dimensional letters, blocks, right? And whenever you're in that part where you can imagine seeing your number up here, you're in your visual quadrant. And when people move up and into their visual quadrant, it's a far more resourceful, calm place than looking down and having their physiology drop and compress here. Looking up, standing up, breathing, opening up the chest is a far calmer place to be. And as soon as you start reading your telephone number backwards, so you actually see it and read it backwards, now you're in part of your brain that's very difficult to be sad or angry or fearful in that moment. So I'd ask those who are online with me right now to look up and imagine their telephone number on a billboard in colors, and just text me or chat to me here and tell us what color are your letters. What color is the background? So just get on your keyboards and say, you know, whatever colors you're seeing, right? And then as you look up and see your telephone numbers, read them backwards and just type in the numbers back to front and just see what that's like for a moment. See how that breaks your emotional state. That's really, really effective at breaking your emotional state. And then the next step, once your emotional state is broken and you're already looking up, is to find a spot and stare at the spot just for a moment. And as you stare at that spot, keep your head and eyes steady and notice that everything around you starts to come into focus. Even though you're staring, you're looking specifically at a spot. So you can see things off to your left, and you can see things off to your right, and you can see things up and down, even though you're staring straight ahead. And as you do that, I'd encourage you to listen for all the sounds around you. Now, you can hear sounds behind you, beside you, in front of you, above you, and below. So as you look straight ahead, I encourage you to hear all the sounds around you. And we're just, for those joining us right now, we're just in peripheral vision. So we're looking up at a spot, sort of up where the wall meets the ceiling, and staring at that spot, keeping our head and eyes steady and seeing everything in front of us and hearing everything around us, behind us, in front of us. And as you do that, I want you to now notice the temperature of your room. As you're looking straight ahead, hearing everything around you, start to feel the temperature of the room. Feel the fabric. Is it leather or cloth you're sitting on? If you have long hair, feel the hair on the back of your neck, or feel the fabric of your shirt on the back of your neck. Feel the surface under your feet. Feel your own emotional state. Feel your physical state. And as you do that, if you're very aware, you'll notice your breathing is slowing down. And as you stay there, staring at a spot in peripheral vision, hearing all the sounds around you, feeling what you're feeling in this moment, your breathing will drop into your diaphragm. And for this moment, right now, you'll feel very, very calm. And we call this peripheral vision, even though it's a 3-sensory activity. We see, we hear, we feel in the moment. So we're actually present in the now, what Eckhart Tolle would call being present in the now. And in this very nanosecond, the now, I don't have a problem. And I would suggest to you that in this very moment, this now, you don't have a problem. You may have a problem an hour from now, but in this moment right now, you do not have a problem. All right? And then once you feel your breathing slowing down, notice your heartbeat. And just feel the feelings in your fingers and your toes. And then just bring your gaze down into the room. So that's step 2 in emotional state management. Step 1 is to look up, see your telephone number, read it backwards. Step 2 is to go into peripheral vision and get that calm coming over your body. Step 3 is to use your resource anchor. Now, I don't know how many people who are watching this today have a resource anchor. Certainly we teach at our center here, Inspired Outcomes, every client, every course, we teach people to have a resource anchor. Now, a resource anchor is a stimulus place, a place that you can press that is neurologically linked to positive emotions. So that resource, I'm going to look for a book here for a second. Wouldn't you know it? Can't find the book I want. Dr. Kessler, in his book called Capture, talks about neurological links to negative emotional states and how when those get fired over and over and over again, they get bigger and faster. So we move from stimulus to negative emotional state faster, while at the same time, the neurological links to positive emotional states starts to atrophy and dwindle. So in a time like COVID-19, us being quarantined and having our rights to gather restricted, our rights to move restricted, some of us are now firing neurological links to negative emotional states rapidly. And what we really need to do is to work with peripheral vision to get calm and then link to all the positive emotional states we can. And we can do that with a physical anchor. So for those of you online, I'd like you to just close your eyes And before you close your eyes, find a place on your hand. So I'll bring my hand really close to the camera. I use this indent in my knuckle right here. It's very specific, and I can touch that in public without anybody noticing it. So when I'm laughing with my children or my wife or friends, I touch that point. I neurologically link my happy emotional state to this spot. So later, if I'm just sitting around and I hold that spot for 2 or 3 seconds, it brings in those same emotional states. It becomes a trigger neurologically linked to happy. So if you can find a spot on the back of your hand that's unique and just get ready to hold it, I want you to close your eyes and just think about a time, a very specific time when you felt confident in the world. You might have been 8, you might have been 14, you may have been 22. And as you remember that very specific time when you were confident about your world, I want you to float down into that moment and see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel the feelings of being super confident. And as you feel those feelings, just hold that spot on your knuckle. That's right, for a count of 5. Yeah, Althea, you can pick your own spot. I recommend that one because you can touch it in public and no one says anything. If you have an anchor up here, people start to notice that you're pulling on your ear all the time. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You could do a different point on your hand if you want, but as long as it's not obtrusive, you can do it easily. Okay, so now just let that point go. I'd like you to think of another time. Think of a time, you know, we've all had an ice cream cone when we were a kid. We've all jumped in a lake. We've all run down a hill laughing our heads off. So I want you to think about a time when you're filled with joy. A specific time as a child when you're filled with joy. And as you remember that time, float down into your body and see what you saw and hear what you heard and feel the feelings of joy in your body. And as you do that, I want you to hold that specific spot on your hand right now. Beautiful. Cool. Now, I'm asking you to recall previous emotional states and anchor them into your spot. And that works extraordinarily well. This is like a bank deposit too. The more times you anchor in positive emotional states, the stronger and more powerful this gets. Now, if there are people online with me right now who like cats, kittens, you know when you see a kitten, you get filled with joy. The trigger is seeing the kitten. And you get filled with joy. That's called a naturally occurring state. The next time you see your kitten or your cat and you're filled with love and joy, hold that spot. Hold that spot. And you'll be able to access that joy and love of the cat by pressing on that trigger spot. And those of you who like puppies, do the same. Now in our house, we bought Santa delivered 2 male bunnies to our house at Christmas. Now, Santa didn't do a good job of checking their gender because we now have 2 little litters, I guess you'll call them litters of bunnies in our house. But when you see my 6-year-old daughter sitting on the couch and you don't know what she has in her hand, and she opens her hand, she has 4 bunnies in her hand, you have to be filled with love and joy. And you anchor that emotional state in, it makes you feel good. I was on the couch. My 10-year-old was sitting next to me. I was watching something on TV and I looked over and he had a bunny on his head. All you can do is laugh. It's beautiful. And if you anchor that emotional state in, then you have access. So to manage emotional states, the 3 steps now that I've taught are: break your emotional state by looking up and seeing your mobile number and reading the last 4 digits backwards. Make sure you're looking up and seeing it. And then stay with your eyes up and go into peripheral vision. See everything in front of you come into focus while keeping your head nice, steady. Listen to all the sounds around you. Feel the feelings you do and stay there long enough to notice your breathing slow down and move into your diaphragm. At that point, if you press on your positive emotional state anchor, this spot, you'll now move from being in negative emotions to breaking the emotional state, becoming calm, and moving into a positive emotional state. I encourage you to practice this daily, maybe several times a day. Tara has her clients put a little ink spot on their hand, and every time they look down at the ink spot, that reminds them to check their emotional state And if they're in a negative emotional state, break the state and move through peripheral vision into being calm and then into a positive emotional state using your anchor. And you can do it multiple times a day. Great. So somebody said, what if you don't have, I'm not saying that there's positive memories associated with bank deposits. What I'm saying, it's like a bank deposit. The more deposits you make, the bigger balance you have. And so you want to make a lot of entries into, you want to anchor a lot of positive emotions in this state. And the positive emotional anchor is transferable from your personal life into your corporate life. And, you know, some people anchor different emotional states in different places. I've been doing NLP for 30 years. I've anchored that spot several times a week for 30 years. So let's call it 5 times a week times 52 weeks a year. I'm at 260 times a year times 30 years. Same spot. So when I fire that, I get energy, goes right up my spine instantly. My physical state changes. I sit up straight, my chest opens up, I breathe. I've used it running. I've used it in business meetings before I'm beginning to speak. I did a TEDx talks here at Guelph. I got on stage, I got my feet planted in the red circle. I held my hands like this. I fired my resource anchor as I scanned the crowd. And when I felt the energy come up, then I started to speak. So it's a very transferable skill. All right, so today I want to talk about the power of words. The power of words. In the NLP communication model, and I'm not here to preach NLP, but I do NLP. All right, so I'm always sharing my context of NLP. Those of you who have worked with me or trained with me know that I pull in outside references like Dr. Kessler's, who I mentioned earlier, that corroborate what we do from other scientific disciplines. Some of my favorite authors are David Kessler, Robert Sapolsky, the book Behave, beautiful book, and Lisa Feldman Barrett, How Emotions Are Made. These books they corroborate what we teach as fundamental skills in NLP from a broader perspective of science and neuroscience. So I think it's very valuable. I also reference often Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief, how our belief impacts our biology, or Joe Dispenza, The Power of Healing with Your Mind. And all of these points, I'll call them points of light. So I talk in NLP terms with you, but all of it is supported and corroborated by a much broader, there we go. I love it. Somebody has their book up. Nice. Yeah. So the power of words. In NLP, we say that we don't use words to describe our experience. We actually experience our world through our words. And just for a moment, think about something that you don't like. Maybe it's spinach. Maybe it's liver. Think of something, a food that you don't like, or an activity. Maybe you don't like vacuum cleaning. Funny enough, I anchored into humor. I was working with a woman in Florida last week, and we anchored humor in, and she doesn't like vacuuming. And she said, well, this works. She went home that night. She fired her anchor and was laughing her head off as she vacuumed. She came to the class the next day laughing her head off. But think of an activity that you don't like to do. And as you think about that activity, say these words in your head. So let's say it is vacuuming. Let's say I didn't like to vacuum, and I don't. If I say to myself, I hate vacuuming, with all the energy that the word hate has, I hate vacuuming, and feel that feeling in your body, where that feeling is, its size, its shape, its intensity. And now just clear the screen. Think about something you do like for a minute. Maybe you like ice cream cones or cappuccinos or lattes. Think about that. Now I want you to go back to vacuum cleaning. And I want you to say this word to yourself. I dislike vacuuming. It's really helpful to vacuum. It helps the house stay clean, but I dislike doing it. And notice where you experience that. The sense of I dislike it versus what you experienced just moments before. And how is that different? Where do you feel in your body the word dislike versus where you feel the word hate? What is the intensity of dislike on a scale of 0 to 10? What is the intensity of the word hate on a 0 to 10? And the power of language is so very, very important. The words we choose to describe our world are actually the words we're using to experience our world. And so we have these wide range of words. We have words way up here that we describe our pleasurable experiences. I love this. I get excited to do this. Then we have the words all the way down here, if you could see my hands, that describe the things we don't like. I hate this, I dislike it. And it's a range from high to low, right? And so we need to be careful with the words we use to express our world. Go back to David Kessler's example, that unraveling the mystery of mental illness, that when we start to use words that express how negative we're in, and those words get bigger and bigger and bigger in their impact, while the words that describe our positive in our life get smaller and smaller. And I'm sharing that in light of where we are with this COVID-19. Because some of us are using words that are positive and supportive, and we're doing cool things like writing letters, connecting to people over social media. And other people are using words which pull them into a place that's not so good. And if you know somebody who is using words that are pulling them in, you can help them by asking some really clear questions. Now, these questions come from the work of Virginia Satir, the famous family counselor. And within NLP, we call this the meta model. So I'm going to share with you some ideas from Virginia Satir. And the one is called universal quantifiers, something that is part of the generalizations, part of a language that makes everything bigger than it is. Now, you might do this, or you might know somebody who does. When they talk, they use words like never or always. That always happens to me. I never get a break. You know, it's always that way. And these words take a single event and put it out everywhere in their world. And if we're experiencing our world through our words, then we actually start to actualize it. We look for, because again, as Lisa Feldman Barrett says, our brains are predicting how we should respond when we encounter the stimulus. So if a person has something that they say that always happens to me, the next time they encounter that stimulus, they're already predicting that it will happen again. If instead they believe that that is one potential outcome, but there's multiples, now their brain can predict that, well, that could happen, or this, or that, or the other thing. And so the question you can ask yourself or others are, when a person uses a word like, that never happens to me, or that always happens to me, you can ask them simply, when specifically did you decide that? Or how specifically do you know that? Now, Katie Byron asks a series of questions. And she asks, when somebody says like that, is that always true? She'll ask, is that, when somebody says that never happens to me, she'll say, is that true? And they'll say yes. She'll say, is it absolutely true all the time? And if they say yes, and she'll ask, well, how does that make you feel? You know, what is your state? And then how would you like to feel that's different? So she asked a series of questions that penetrate that universal quantifier, that always happens to me, or it never happens to me. And so when you ask yourself, is it true? Is it absolutely true? You can quickly find examples where it's not true. Right? I forgot to put out the recycling bins last Tuesday. And, you know, we get our recycling picked up. Now, in a negative frame of mind, I might say, I always do that. In that moment, I'm teaching my brain to predict that next Tuesday or Wednesday I'll forget, and the Wednesday after that I'll forget. But if I actually say, wow, that was interesting. I saw all my neighbors' recycling bins out. I wonder why I chose not to put mine out today. Now I've moved it from an always happening to me to, and which is very negative for my psychology too. Wow, I wonder why I did that. I wonder why I chose not to put it out today. In asking myself why I might have chose to not do it, I'm actually taking responsibility for the choice. I'm acknowledging that I had a choice to put my stuff out or not put my stuff out. I'm at cause, and I've taken away this pervasive nature of the universal quantifier. I always do that, or it never works out. You know, garbage day never works out for me, which is just not true, right? So words we use are so powerful. I'm encouraging you to listen to your own words. Listen to the words you hear of other people around you. Listen for people. And that's why I mentioned at the onset here, I like the way Justin Trudeau is talking. He's talking positively in the affirmation that we will get through this by working together, cooperating. And he, even though reporters try and bait him into declaring, you know, the Emergency Measures Act or discussions about, you know, the dark side that's coming, that we need the Emergency Measures Act, he refuses to go there. He always talks about the possibility. It is a possibility. We'll use all the data. We'll make the best decision in the moment to ensure that Canadians have all the maximum amount of freedom they can have in this time. The messaging is always positive about possibility. There are other leaders that you listen to who don't talk so clearly about that. And I think that as an example, as a metaphor for using words really, really well, he's also not using universal quantifiers. He's using very specific times, terms, and helping us look forward to the end. I think when you see that in action, when you know the power of language, I'd really encourage you to listen to your words, because you are experiencing your world through your words. So I'd like to close now with, again, the positive future model. So if you guys could, or if you would, I want you to think about something that you right now in this moment believe is challenging. Something that's challenging that for you to accomplish in the next day or 3 days or 7 days. And when you've got a thing that you want to get done, maybe it's some sort of negotiation, you now have to move online. Maybe it's a task around the house. Maybe it's getting out, buying stuff and getting it back home for you and your family. But it's a task or an event that you find challenging to think about right now. And I want you to just close your eyes and just turn inwardly and imagine that your timeline from your past to your future, there's this line. Now this line might go from right to left or front to back. Each of us have our own unique timeline. And I want you to imagine this line from your past to your future. I want you to float up above now. And I want you to go out into the future to a point 15 minutes past the successful completion of this task, which you were previously a little bit anxious about. And I want you to stay out there 15 minutes past the successful completion. Turn and look back towards now. And just stay there and notice how any anxiousness that you were experiencing has disappeared 15 minutes after the successful completion of this task. And if you're out 15 minutes, and as you sit there 15 minutes out past the successful completions task, you can actually anchor this feeling of calm, knowing that you can get through the things you need to get through today, tomorrow, a week from now, 2 weeks from now. And then when you're ready, and only when you're ready, float back to now, only as quickly as you can now notice that all the events between the successful completion of that task and today, this moment, aligned for you to get it done. And when you're ready, come on back into the room and open your eyes. So again, we're at 28 minutes. Please remember the 3 steps: break state, peripheral vision, anchor. Put in lots of positive anchors. Monitor the words you're using and the people around you are using. Listen for positivity, listen for possibility, and adjust your words to the best of your ability. And use this positive future model every time you want to think about tasks you have to get done. Just float out 15 minutes past the successful completion of the task. Whatever, it may be as simple as going to get gas for your car. Just float out 15 minutes past that and notice that everything comes together for you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you, we'll see you 24 hours, actually 23 and a half hours from now, 11 o'clock tomorrow morning for those of you who join us. Thank you.